mandate, right? But most especially, we should be looking at the code of conduct for public officers, because a lot of the loot is hidden away, all right? And we're able to hide because the asset declaration regime is very porous. What is the problem? Under the current regime, the officers who declare don't have to have those declarations published. So we call it publish or perish. We have to publish these declarations when the public officers declare, or will perish. Because like people jovially say, when you take the brown envelope, you fill it in, and then it's put in the envelope and sealed. What if everything you've written there is wrong? Who will verify? So publication and verification are very critical to any asset declaration law. So that's the thing we should do, yesterday. And you don't forget also that under the PNDC regime, that's the law we had. There was publication. I've gone to TV3 several times with the declarations published by Commodore Sivo Bimpe, Mary Grant, J.J. Rawlings himself, many PNDC appointees. Their declarations were published and were at the Assembly Press, just behind the moving peak here. And I have copies and I've shown them on TV. And we cancelled that law and now made it a secretive law, and which has enabled politicians to get more corrupt, because once nobody can go and see what they declared and find the differences, it makes it easier for them to get away with murder. So that's how come we need to work on the asset declaration regime that's under the code of conduct for public officers.
So thank you very much. One thing that we'll be doing after December 7th, we'll be looking at what should be the agenda for the next government and addressing corruption. And we'll come back to you on that later on a civil society platform, media platform, to see how it goes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We want to have a summary of how we could address corruption in relation to the politics of the nation.
We do not need to put so many things into our manifestos regarding corruption and then come into power and do nothing about it. We should address the facets of corruption. What creates corruption? How do we now use that to bring in effective laws to make sure that we are dealing with corruption head on? If we don't deal with corruption head on, then all the things that we need to do, our governance structure, making sure that the infrastructure that we put in is good, making sure that procurement is safe, making sure that quite a lot of things are done properly, it becomes a challenge for us all. But politicians should be such that they bring country first before political parties. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that so much in this Fourth Republic. It is important that the country comes before politicians and political parties. And leaders should be more sacrificial in doing what they have to do for the country than their political parties.
So tell me, who should we vote for come December 7th?
That is up to your conscience. That is up to your conscience who you want to vote for. But definitely, as a CPP person, I would say vote for CPP. But it's up to your conscience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
As we've identified, but of course we've been launching a manifesto for some time now, and thankfully, Mr. Bujo is with us. So Mr. Bujo, you've been looking at the manifestos that was recently launched. Let me ask if they blew your mind this time, or it's still the same old story.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me just start off with take off from the corruption conversation. First of all, the manifestos, as you've seen them, none of them have, in fact, most of them have corruption. The manifestos, none of the manifestos critically address the drivers of corruption in Ghana. That's the parties mostly focus on building systems instead of addressing the process that leads to corruption. None of the manifestos target reforming the excessive control of the executive of the public procurement system. And indeed, the last one, none of the manifestos touch on leveraging the Office of Special Prosecutor to deepen the fight against corruption. Maybe there's a good reason for that, right? The Office of the Special Prosecutor has recently said that there's, what did he say, I don't understand that. Essentially saying that he's done his best, whatever happens. It tells you that, look, if you want to fight corruption, we did an article, I think, January 2017. So fighting corruption and we started the presidency. And the reason was simple. All these big procurement projects you hear about, SML, Kelly GVG. I'll tell you the funny story about Kelly GVG. So I got a deputy minister in this administration who called me at midnight and said, listen, Franklin, there's this contract between the finance minister and the communications minister. Cabinet even doesn't really know the details, but it's going to pass. So get it. And I got it at midnight. I got to work. That's how time we got to know about the LGBT. The process was shambolic. The entire procurement process was an aberration, really. And I thought that all the things that I really suspected from my good friend Lesson, and then came. And they ran through this whole thing. As we speak, LGBT was supposed to do what? Catch telecom thieves, essentially telecom revenue thieves. The idea was that telecommunication companies were stealing revenues. So there was a need to monitor them. That contract was $176 million. As we speak, we've been paying $1.5 million every month since 2018. We've not seen a single report of how many telecom thieves have been caught, how much money have been saved to the state, and why we should continue paying that reclusive entity, private sector actor, $1.5 million every month. Right? Talk about SML. I mean, SML is another matter. I mean, just don't understand. Now there's a new form of corruption, we call it state capture private sector actors. Of course, GVG is one of them, and then of course SML is also one of them. But there's some sort of justification, to borrow my colleagues by Simon's system, that we are enchanted because the processes of the project that these things go to support seem to be overly good to the national ID card. It's a wonderful project. Why would you want to question why you're receiving cards for free? What's the point? I mean, if India did it for less than $1, or 600 million people put onto the national ID card, why are we paying so much for the national ID card? That's the question we asked. Now, take it from me. I was one of those who actually supported through being a member of the Danish Business Sounding for Private Sector Board. We actually somehow blessed that project when through the leader. As for some of the money, that went to my good friend Moses Beatty. Moses is a good friend, yes, but I still have to have the questions. How are we procuring these cards at this amount? So, multi-million-dollar project, set up all these parastatals across the country. You can't fight that, right? Why are you fighting something like a national ID card? Some of these parastatals are being loved. Vice President is a beautiful gentleman, but when I talk to him, I see someone who is interested in making sure that the right things are done. It's probably not concerned about the other side of those who are actually benefiting and laughing all the way to the bank. Now, that kind of corruption is a type which is going to be dealing with right now. As of the other ones, those petty ones, it is true. I mean, my good friend's lifelong work has been about fighting corruption, and she already mentioned some of the areas, bribery and all of that. We should be dealing with that. But at this stage, some of the, corruption has high-level corruption. It's all actually dealing with. I recall somewhere in 2016, 2006, I was in London and having a conversation about these issues that corruption on the continent corruption cost the continent almost 25% of its GDP, right? At the time, that was worth $49 billion of the continent's GDP. There was a guy from Christian who was fighting me. Why am I against government getting more aid? And I said, listen, and then he gave a statistic. He said, well, did I know that hunger, malnutrition kills every child in Africa every 3 seconds? Well, I've done the calculation of grand corruption cost per second. It was $4,900 per second. Now, if you got that, just oppose that, it may sound funny, it may sound propagandist. That's the way we actually have to analyze the problem. So if you do get high level corruption, let's ask yourself how much $176 million could have been used on Kelly to pay for school fees for kids, buy food for some of these kids, and all of those. Those matters, let's let them sink. We are not against private actors making money. exchange rate. And on that, on corruption, I think I just want to say something else about that. You asked me a question about manifesto. We see manifesto as some sort of legitimacy, some sort of barometer of legitimacy for political party promises. Promises are interesting and are great. I mean, I counted quite a number of promises. I've forgotten the numbers, but I'm sure it will come. And look, I seriously think we need a proper conversation about how to organize the state. There are so many promises. You tend to look at them and you ask yourself, what do we need as a state? What is the optimal size of money the state needs to prosecute the basics of life? Water, electricity, roads, healthcare. Those are the most important things, really. I mean, all of the things that I keep jumping about every night, and depending on the crowd of politicians see me, say, oh, no, with a car, no, bicycle. It's like, it's because of some ecstasy, really. And just to say that I've looked at the manifestos through and through, a bit of that which tries to address the issues that matter to people, that make it a bit more human or human related, seem to be the one that are related to the health sector, the water, as I said, education.
But I'd like to focus on the governance commitment. So, dealing with corruption.
I thought you gave me a blanket check. So,
No.
Well, I was on the governance issues. Let me just tell you a few of those governance issues. I yield to the fact that the politicians have now woken up to the idea that we do need a downsized government. And I'm a firm believer in a limited parliamentarian, true. So I like it, and I see that I like it. So the MPP says 15 ministers come. NDC says 60 ministers come. Movement for Change says 40 ministers come. Movement for Change has interesting ideas. My good friend Erica is here. I read it first of all. And I see all these, by the way, some of the things these parties originated from America, people do not know. His manifesto actually comes much earlier than the rest, but we don't give him that credit. But just staying on this point about
by the presidential candidates for the All People's Congress.
So the capping of this ministerial thing is important. Look, if the NDC and NPP get to do it really, and there's an amendment of Articles 71 properly, I'm sure we'll be able to save close to 2.5 billion Ghana cedis. 1.3 billion for ministerial. Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry. So if we manage to cap the ministers at 50 and maybe 60, let me go with the NPP formula because that seems to be a bit more in the middle. So 50, we tend to look at, we did the calculation, it comes to savings of about 1.3 billion Ghana cedis for the duration of 4 years, hypothetically 4 years. But then if you added that of Article 71 holder that was supposed to be yanked off, something like totally which we should do immediately, look at this, we should be making close to 2.5 billion Ghana cedis, right? We can spend about, at the time we did some sort of a referendum, I mean when we were doing this constitutional review stuff, we spent about 6 million Ghana cedis to go around the country asking for ideas. If I extrapolate that and did some sort of value for probably did rationalize for inflation, we'd be needing close to about 2 million Ghana cedis for a referendum of that nature. And just, if you want Ghanaians, so Article 71 holders expand from them, but we do say yes.
Okay.
The point.
We'll get to delve deeper into what you found amongst others. Let me bring in Dr. Nana on this one as well. She's a citizen, not a spectator, and a CSO activist as well. And you've also been looking at it. At least we've identified the gaps. We've talked about a few of them, but really from your viewpoint, where you sit, where you stand, what exactly are you also expecting? Have you seen it? And I'm sure they're here. What would you want to tell them in terms of your expectations as well?
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I want
to start with a story, okay? Because I think stories, even traditional stories, really give out a message. And in 2019, I was in Munich and had to take a bus. And when I took the bus, and I mean, there was nobody taking any money, there was nobody checking anything, and I was surprised. So I went to see the driver afterwards to pay for it, and he told me, well, I mean, at this time, well, you can pay, but really, you don't really, it's not something that we really check, just check randomly. And when I got out of the bus, I was thinking, can this happen in Ghana? Where you can go on the bus, sit on the bus, and just take a ride, and the assumption is that you've already paid because there's a card that everybody's supposed to pay every month. And if you haven't paid, then you have money. You will come up and you will pay. That is a culture of integrity. And it goes beyond just talk or slogans. And it is just ordinary citizens who are living up to that, benchmark of integrity. And it made me reflect very deeply about Ghana and how low we have sunk when it comes to integrity. And integrity, the lack of integrity is the reason why we have corruption. And why is it so important for us to talk with political parties today about this? Because the fish, they say, rots for the head. We have chosen multi-party politics to help us choose our leadership in this country. And therefore, political parties, the mechanism of a political party system should be one that enables us to choose leaders who have integrity. And when our leaders have integrity, they are able then to inform the very structures that govern this country. The reason why Ghana is where we are today, when it comes to all the different, if you look at all the indicators where corruption is concerned, we have fallen so low, we have sunk. Now, I just want to quote just the latest Afro-Barometer report, which now says that when we look at the executive, particularly the presidency, now people feel that 54%, we have been looking at a corruption index, 54% of the people feel that the presidency is now a corrupt institution, as compared to 31% in 2012. Parliament, 51% of those who were surveyed, compared to 33% in 2012, believe that our parliament is corrupt. The judiciary, 44%, as compared to 35% in 2012. Now, that is not something that we must be very happy about. And that means that we must be looking at those who say they are now going to governance and see how serious they take corruption. And how do we do that? By looking at what they are promising. Of course, integrity comes in here. What you promise, you must also keep. We also know that many of them say things that they do not do. But assuming that we are going to see them actually implement their manifestos, there are a number of gaps that we see. And I think it's important to mention them. And Mary did touch on some of them, and I would reiterate a few and also add some of them. None of the parties that have claimed they are going to work on asset declaration, if you look at their manifestos, none of them have addressed the specific demand that there should be verification and publication of asset declaration. That is one key point. There's no commitments that we made to political party funding and campaign finance reform, which go this lack of commitment does go against both the AU and UN conventions that we have in relation to this. There's no commitment to political party and campaign finance reformation, for example, reviewing the political parties law to compel political parties, to file audited accounts to the EC, which already exists, but to include the candidates. Because a lot of the time, this financing does not necessarily go to the political parties, it goes to the candidates. So for the candidates to file, this to have this audited accounts. The Section 29 of the Political Parties Act has the option to publish, the declaration of assets by political parties, but this is an option that the EC has. It's never been done, and we don't see any of the political parties committing to see that this is done in their manifestos. And none of the political parties has committed to passing the Conduct of Public Officers bill into law. That's one area that we believe that has to be looked at as well. Also, I think Mary mentioned it, institutionalizing and enforcing the client service charter for public institutions, looking at what are the services that public institutions provide, what is the procedure for providing that service, what's the cost, what's the turnaround time, so that people will know these things and they don't have to put something on the paper or under the paper to get the public services that they need. Are we going to see in the manifestos, and it's already done, is that something that you could look at? Article 2864, if you look at our constitution, looks at the issues around illicit enrichment. Are we going to see this criminalized? A colleague of mine, late colleague of mine, used to say that these days you don't talk about your children about becoming lawyers or doctors or engineers. It's either politician or pastor, because that is where the money is. Now, I mean, it's something that we need to look at. People are getting rich from going into politics. And that is one of the things that we need to be looking at. Conflict of interest. Is this an area? I know that I've seen something in the NDC manifesto on that on conflict of interest, but really, I believe that that is one of the areas that we have to take seriously when it comes to nepotism in public office. And how are we going to deal with that? How are the political parties promising to deal with that? So I was saying that, yes, I think integrity is key. And to a large extent, Ghana has several laws, policies, regulations on that deal with corruption and institutions. How are we rather going to enforce these laws? How are we going to resource the institution? The Office of the Special Prosecutor. How are we going to ensure that it is resourced properly so that it can do the work that it has to do? Okay. And overall, I would hope that we would go also just beyond the political parties. This really goes, it is something that we have to look at the very fabric of our society, and all of us need to address.
We have 7 political parties with us today, and so we would want to wrap up briefly, and then we can NDC. We have the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC joining us. Okay, Mustafa Bande was supposed to be with us. It does appear we do not have him joining us. So I think we are good to go at this point. Once he joins us, we will go through it. So we have the New Force, we have the APC, we have the CPP, we have the BOOM, we have MFC, and of course the NPP. So we'll start off with the only presidential candidate, of course. He will speak on authority for his party. And we are told that he's the only one that has a manifesto that really tackles issues about corruption. But there have been concerns raised also about the term itself. So for the APC, definition really broadly for corruption and how we're really tackling it, we want to start with.
Hello, yes, good afternoon. Our protocol observed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Hassan Erga, founder, leader, and flag bearer of the All People's Congress. I'm very grateful to be among you today to discuss the issues of corruption and how we intend to handle corruption. As you can see, she said, I'm the only presidential candidate willing to face this and also to explain to you where we are as a country, what we can do, and the measures we have put in place to change this. First of all, in 2016, when political parties were bringing out manifesto, I proposed special prosecutor's office. And I said, we needed to have a special prosecutor office in order to begin to fight corruption differently. And my proposal was not a special prosecutor's office, but an independent special prosecutor office. Totally different from what we have today.
It's not independent.
It's not independent. The one we have worked with the office with the Attorney General. And we want an office that stands on its own, autonomous, has its own budget, determines its own cases, without necessarily working one hand in hand with the office of the Attorney General. They must be autonomous. They must have the power to prosecute, investigate, and have the authority to do things on their own. Once they work under the office of the Attorney General, then they lose the essence of that office. So MPP implemented it, should have at least made some consultations with Hassan Arega or the APs, because this is how we want to build our country, an inclusive governance council, where we all have views being conceived in order to build this country. This country is for all of us. It doesn't matter who's party to power, who is president, who is not. Imani Ghana comes with a lot of proposals and so many things, other institutions, youth country. This is to build this country together. We cannot sit and watch a particular country, a government implement policies that we do happen. But in all this, in my 2024 manifesto, in fighting corruption, let's first look at one thing first, the mindset.
The vice presidential candidate of the new force as well. So you are the latest kid on the block, just like the movement for change. What will be different when it comes to your fight against corruption and what exactly is in your manifesto? We've heard about the gaps. What exactly will be different with the new force?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this very important topic. I think that I would like to commend the GACC for this initiative. The fight for the fight against corruption is not an easy one, but it is worth the effort. There are three things that we envisage to do at the new force to address the issue of corruption in this country. One is to work with the CSOs and anti-corruption agencies to strengthen the anti-corruption legal framework and the institutions in the country. We also look at making sure that government data is secure and that government operations are also transparent. That is the second one. And then the third one, we think that corruption cannot be fought only at the government level. So we also are looking at working with the local communities to establishing the anti-corruption networks so that we train them, empower them to understand the corruption issues in the country so they can interrogate governance issues at the local level. So we do acknowledge and we understand a lot of the issues relating to the existing regulations. The expert panel mentioned a few. We talked about the issues concerning the asset declaration. We have a law in place, and the Auditor General to whom the public officers have to report doesn't have the mandate to verify the declaration. And then we've also talked about the fact that the penalty for non-compliance is rather weak. and so it doesn't encourage the public officials to comply. And so we think that this is something that is very important, very key, and we are looking forward to enhancing this regulation, of course, working with the anti-corruption agencies. And in terms of data, I mentioned the fact that it's very important for us to secure government data. You can imagine a scenario where we don't have any idea of the barrels of oil that we produce or the amount of cocoa that we produce. And then, of course, we cannot tell how much export revenue we get from these resources. So it's very important for us to have a system in place that secures government data, as well as the process we're talking about the Procurement Act, the fact that there is this focus on through sourcing rather than competitive bidding. And that means that we are able to get value for money to do that. So, as I mentioned, these are some of the things that we are looking forward to doing, working with the CSOs to strengthen the existing regulatory framework and institutions that are concerned with anti-corruption.
Okay. Well, let me come to you, Mr. Fan, at this point, but CPP, you've been around for quite some time. We've talked about the gaps in the system, please, when it comes to manifestos. You've heard the experts on this issue. What is the CPP offering that is different?
Good morning. Let me start from where Franklin left. Franklin, how can we have a situation in this country where every car has one on it, and they can hire a police rider to drive them everywhere to stop them and ask them where they come from? Not possible. This is something that can happen. But let me start by also saying that you need a leader who is sacrificial, with the intention to do good by the country and not by their political party. It is key. Look, is this the first time we are coming here to talk about this? Every 4 years, we come and we talk about the same thing. We throw things in our manifestos to fox the people. Because as the panel rightly said, what has happened? Our democracy is about 30 years. Have we really tackled corruption? If you take our manifestos, have we been able to do it? And the panel said it. There are certain issues that really haven't been tackled. I think with us in the CPP, we see corruption as multifaceted and needs a multifaceted approach. We are not interested in throwing things to do what? To force the people come in and not to do what we have to do. So when I talk about, or when we talk about multifaceted, what should the approach be? Within the CPP, the first 90 days of a CPP government, we are going to hold a corruption summit. That corruption summit will not only have politicians, will have all stakeholders. And if you listen to the panel, my dear lady who's sitting on the corner, she indicated that the people don't tend to be part and parcel of it. We would bring the people on board for us to discuss. And what we are going to discuss, we are going to discuss the causes of corruption. What are the causes? What are those things? Because you need to be able to look at the causes before you can bring in the laws that can hold those causes. So I have listed the few. One of the major causes of corruption is low public sector wages and salaries and petty corruption. My salary, and for me, I can't use it to do anything. Somebody comes, businessman comes, he offers something, Will I not take it? That has to be addressed. The culture of political patronage. Do we not see it today? Isn't it something that is causing challenges for us? Political patronage? We will have to discuss it and go deep into it. The weak legal framework within our anti-corruption institutions and the question of their ineffectiveness. Are they all sitting in the room here? Do we not hear of them? Are they strong enough to handle corruption?
Obviously, because you're in government and you're hoping to come back to the next government as well. Really, there are concerns that we have not been taken seriously as a people, and then also the fight against corruption has not been tackled as it ought to be. At least we had that in the manifesto. What exactly would you say has been done? Are you taking the people seriously and the fight?
Well, thank you very much. I think that just sitting down and listening to the CEOs and the comments from took me back to some of my personal experiences. 2006, so that I became an attorney general. One of the things that happens to you when you become an attorney general, people immediately come to you and tell you how corruption is. Mr. A is a corrupt man, you have to arrest him. That's what. Even before the whistleblowers came into place. I remember he came to me and said, one former minister has signed a contract in December of the year they lost the election. So like, we are in November, you lose an election, and in December you sign a contract. And you shouldn't have signed a contract in December. And it shows that there was corruption. When you look at the contract, there's nothing corrupt about the contract. But this person is telling me that there's corruption. Now the first thing is that because there was no Public Procurement Act, the minister could sign the contract. Can you imagine now the level of contract that are being signed? If an individual has the power to decide that I'm giving this contract worth $200 million to my friend or something, even if he seeks to give it to his friend under a sole sourcing regime, that can be questioned. And so, what will we do without law? What will we really do without law? Even if the laws are not adequate, even if we need enforcement, the fact that the law is there for me as a lawyer and as somebody who has been an implementer of the law and has also been an infrastructure minister, I think it is much better than the law is. I'll give you another example of our public procurement. When I was railway minister, we decided to do the Accra-Kumasi line through PPP. Private House had done a study on the line and said there was a cap, a financial viability cap, cost over $2 billion, and a financial viability cap of about 200 million, which meant that if you were doing it by PPP, it was only cost effective. It only made economic sense. It was $1.8 billion, but the cost of $2 billion didn't make sense. We started a procurement process. When we reached the last stage, I saw that they were asking, all of them were asking us questions which meant a commitment of the ministry, a financial commitment. For example, they wanted guarantees that they would charge a certain amount, and if they couldn't charge that amount, government to pay for them. As the Minister for Railway Development, I didn't have the power to commit that. The Public Financial Management Act is clear. There's the Ministry of Finance who has that power. I went to have a discussion with the Ministry of Finance and said, the commitments that even though they say it's PPP, though they operate and transfer, they are asking for certain financial commitments that are not in a position to make. So I want somebody from our ministry to sit on the panel for the final process of procurement. Somebody from the ministry sat on the panel, somebody won the bid. The second person protested on two grounds, that there was something that he didn't agree with the future government, and also I changed the panel at the last stage. Public Procurement Authority agreed with him and said we should go through the final stage again. Listen, it wasn't personal for me. I didn't know any of the bidders, and I was happy that at least we had a body in place and we had a system where somebody could protest and get what he wants. The final stage did not take place, and I left the position. But the point I'm making is that I wonder what we'll do without me. I come to the second point that somebody has made, the person made the story about entering a bus in the neighborhood. Listen, when I went to London for the first time in the 80s, there were no cameras. And so people passing through the gates. It was happening every day. One of my colleagues is in the room. He was talking on his phone in Accra. And when he went about 100 meters, he was stopped by the police. And he said, "You were talking on phone." "No, I'm not talking about phone. I'm not talking." They played in the video of you talking on his phone. So just now when you call him and he's in the car, he won't pick his phone. We underestimate the impact of what is happening now. Digitization, so we underestimate that. Because even the fact that there are cameras everywhere makes people more careful now. I watched on social media, there was some theft at Arabaka. They call it people. And so what is happening, what the NDP has done over the years is to just implement not only the law, the policy, and also the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure, which will allow or make it more difficult for you to be corrupt.
Okay, but I'm sure you can hear the murmuring in the background. The concern is that why are the laws inefficient? It's because you are not resourcing the institutions that are supposed to make the law efficient. What have you done and what will you do differently?
You see, this question you asked me, I punched the question. You know the way you punch questions, so you prepare for them. And the question I have to have reference. When I'm going to sit there, I have to punch. Because I punch a question. Okay, the budgetary allocation to the police has increased by 162%. The budgetary allocation to the audit service has increased by 83%. The budgetary allocation by charge has increased by 21%. You can allocate what you have, but I am telling you that we have been committed to increase the budgetary allocation to these institutions. But don't also forget the same.
Okay, so tell us your name and why you are here.
Yeah, so my name is Che Kojo Yamwa.
Right.
I think this forum has been very important, especially building partnership to fight against corruption.
Okay.
And for those of us civil society actors who are working in the natural resource space, it's very important that we understand the role of corruption and in natural resource management. It is very important that the discussion centered around how within this electioneering period we can be very mindful of corruption and corruption tendencies. It is very important that the political parties that were interviewed or that spoke addresses certain areas where corruption is promoted, especially when political parties and functionaries come around to campaign, the sort of demands that are made of them in terms of monetary demands that breeds the foundation for corruption tendencies, because the money that they give, they have to find a way to recoup those monies back. And that is where it informs procurement issues and contracting that relates to natural resource governance and others. So we're very happy that these are important elements. We also noted that the agencies, including the Office of the Special Prosecution and even former Attorney General and others, were also present to indicate some of the areas where we can improve the fight against corruption. And I think that that is very good. And we're happy that we are able to appreciate this process.
Good.
So we're looking at the recommendations made for addressing corruption in electioneering year and beyond. And we want you to give us some summary of your recommendation.
Well, I think it came on the back of the conversation as to whether the political party manifestos actually address corruption well enough. I'm not convinced. They don't talk about the processes leading to corruption. They're only interested in talking about building systems, putting together laws together. None of them even talked about the OSP, because they think the OSP is becoming a thorn in their flesh, right? Now, and I ask myself, why should we allow ourselves to be toyed with for these big procurement gigs contracts that are going on, and then the only real people who are fighting these things are you and I in civil society? Why? We are the only people who are doing this work, the only people, including investigative journalists. We are the only people actually going after these thieves and then bringing them out. How did you hear about SML? How did you hear about County? Today I said it. Midnight, a deputy minister called me and said, "Hey, Chief, contract is being signed on the blank side of even cabinet." As we speak, Esla is still paying that company $1.5 million since 2018, apparently to catch telecom revenue thieves. Have you seen any report that said this month MTN stole Ghana money, 5 citizens? No, but the people are collecting the money coolly like that. What is this? SML, PASA. Even as I mentioned, there are all kinds of projects that are being done which are costing the Ghanaian taxpayer so much, but then it's made it look as if it's a national duty, it's a service they're providing. It's not fair. So I still insist that I'm going to the British High Commission. I have a communication donors there. I'm going to tell them to their faces. Stop wasting your time. Give money to this body, procurement. Don't do it. Give it to us. Investigating journalists and CSOs will do the work for you. We'll even go to court and do all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good. So we're discussing addressing corruption within the political arena, and I'm here with an important personality. I want him to introduce himself.
Well, I'm not too important. I'm an ordinary citizen. My name is Martin Pebu, an activist and a lawyer.
Yeah. So we want to look at addressing corruption and why is it important, especially within the political season, electioneering period, and beyond.
Great. Okay, why is it important? You know, corruption distorts everything. You know, when you go into economics, they'll tell you that all things being what? Equal. So the forces of demand and supply, etc., work when all things are equal. But corruption disrupts the equilibrium and so many things. So that is why it is front and center of any governance. If you want to have good governance, good economic policies, etc., you must tackle corruption. Otherwise, corruption disrupts everything. So that's how come we must give it all the attention that it requires. And when it comes to our political space, you see that corruption is taking over because our laws are weak. And so we have to come up with laws that can help tackle. Just merely putting on the statute books that if we find you guilty of corruption, there will be a minimum of, say, 12 years and a maximum of 25 years. It's not enough. Because don't forget, who is going to report the corruption? Who? Who will do it when so many people are complicit? So we need to make the laws in such a manner that we don't need a complainant. That as soon as we find out that your income does not support the properties you have, straight away the state institution responsible can go on with the investigations, like the OSP. Yes, OSP is doing, but we need to resource the OSP more and more for that, mandate, right? But most especially, we should be looking at the code of conduct for public officers, because a lot of the loot is hidden away, all right? And we're able to hide because the asset declaration regime is very porous. What is the problem? Under the current regime, the officers who declare don't have to have those declarations published. So we call it publish or perish. We have to publish these declarations when the public officers declare, or will perish. Because like people jovially say, when you take the brown envelope, you fill it in, and then it's put in the envelope and sealed. What if everything you've written there is wrong? Who will verify? So publication and verification are very critical to any asset declaration law. So that's the thing we should do, yesterday. And you don't forget also that under the PNDC regime, that's the law we had. There was publication. I've gone to TV3 several times with the declarations published by Commodore Sivo Bimpe, Mary Grant, J.J. Rawlings himself, many PNDC appointees. Their declarations were published and they were at the Assembly Press, just behind the moving pic here. And I have copies and I've shown them on TV. And we cancelled that law and now made it a secretive law, and which has enabled politicians to get more corrupt, because once nobody can go and see what they declared and find the differences, it makes it easier for them to get away with murder. So that's how come we need to work on the asset declaration regime. That's under the code of conduct for public officers.
So thank you very much. One thing that I'll be doing after December 7th, we'll be looking at what should be the agenda for the next government and addressing corruption. And we'll come back to you on that later on a civil society platform, media platform, to see how it goes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We want to have a summary of how we could address corruption in relation to the politics of the nation.
We do not need to put so many things into our manifestos regarding corruption and then come into power and do nothing about it. We should address the facets of corruption. What creates corruption? How do we now use that to bring in effective laws to make sure that we are dealing with corruption head on? If we don't deal with corruption head on, then all the things that we need to do, our governance structure, making sure that the infrastructure that we put in is good, making sure that procurement is safe, making sure that quite a lot of things are done properly, it becomes a challenge for us all. But politicians should be such that they bring country first before political parties. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that so much in this Fourth Republic. It is important that the country comes before politicians and political parties. And leaders should be more sacrificial in doing what they have to do for the country than their political parties.
So tell me, who should we vote for come December 7th?
That is up to your conscience. That is up to your conscience who you want to vote for. But definitely, as a CPP person, I would say vote for CPP. But it's up to your conscience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.